Down, and I'm back here with another Mythical Monday video. Now, as always, people, don't forget to like, share and subscribe. Feel free to drop a comment if you like, and I'll happily get back to you. Thank you all for tuning into my Mythical Monday videos, man. I really do appreciate it. Got another good one for you all today, and one that I don't think has been discussed that much. So let's get straight into it, man. The super middleweight division. James DeGale and David Benavidez. How would that go if these two were to meet in their prime? Now, fascinating matchup it would have been. Let's start off with David Benavidez, who is currently the super middleweight champion. Well, he's currently in line. He's got the WBC interim super middleweight title, so we won't count that as a real belt. But he is a former WBC super middleweight champion until he had to relinquish that belt due to activities outside of the ring. Canelo is currently the undisputed champion at super middleweight, and that is the fight that we all want to see, right? That is the fight that a lot of us have been campaigning for. They think that David Benavidez could be the one to knock Canelo off that perch, if anyone is to do it, at super middleweight at least. Now, we know Canelo's going to be fighting Jamel Charlo next, but David Benavidez has been on his own run, man, and he's really putting himself in line as, you know, some people are calling him the boogeyman at that division. He is a nightmare to fight, and he fought Caleb Plant last time out. That was a bit of a grudge match, but he got the decision win over Caleb Plant in that fight. But David Benavidez, man, he's tall, he's strong, he's big, he has a lot of volume and activity, and he punches very hard, man. He really comes for you. You know, they don't call him the Mexican monster for nothing, as Mike Tyson would call him, man. He was very taken by David Benavidez. I remember watching his podcast. He was really raving about him, and for good reason as well. Like I said, David Benavidez, when he switched on, and the only reason why I say that about being switched on is because he has shown ill discipline outside of the ring before. But when he is switched on, against Caleb Plant, beat him by decision. David Lemieux knocked him out in 3 rounds. Other fighters, he beat Darrell, knocked him out in 9 rounds. He's a very, very good fighter, David Benavidez. And like I said, one that is in line to fight Canelo next. That's the one that we all want to see. And, you know, he's just a nightmare to fight. He looks like he could fill up as a light heavyweight. He's that big. Do you know what I mean? And I think with that size, that volume, that activity, and his resilience as well. I mean, he doesn't look like someone... If he's got you on the back foot, it's over. That's pretty much how David Benavidez fights have gone. With Caleb Plant, in that fight in particular, though, Caleb Plant did show, you know, how to possibly beat Benavidez by employing a good boxing game, as we know. He was winning those first few rounds against him, but then tiredness kind of wore him down the stretch, probably due to Benavidez's relentless pressure, and he kind of wore him down, and then, you know, he was kind of hanging on towards the end. How would James DeGale have gotten with somebody like David Benavidez? Because James DeGale has got fantastic ability. Forget his last fight. Obviously, he's retired now. Retired about 4 years ago. He last lost against Chris Eubank. That was when he retired. He was done then. But James DeGale in his prime, when he was traveling over to America, when he defeated Darrell, I think the other brother, he defeated Darrell, and he won that fight. And he built up a string of victories on the road, called himself the Road Warrior. That DeGale that was in his prime, how would he have got on against the likes of a David Benavidez, man? Would he have been able to employ his boxing skills onto him and, you know, keep him at bay for the whole 12 rounds? Would have been difficult for me. I have to be honest. It would have been a bit difficult, I think, for DeGale to do that. I think ability-wise, he has a lot more in his toolbox than David Benavidez. Very skillful, terrific amateur, James DeGale was, man. Went all the way to the Olympics, so we know how good he really was. He was one of our most decorated amateurs that we've had over here in the UK, and his talent and ability really shone through in the pros as well. He was a former world champion at super middleweight. Lost to George Groves in that grudge match that they had, but a lot of people thought that, you know, going into that fight, he was the favourite, but maybe he was a bit complacent in that fight. You know, he learned his lesson in that. But since then, you know, he went on to, you know, really do well at super middleweight. Call out Carl Froch, didn't get that fight in the end, but his skill-wise and his talent and his ability, he had great footwork, he was a southpaw, and he could punch as well. Do you know what I mean? James DeGale could punch. Not saying he was the hardest puncher at super middleweight, but he did have a little dig on him. So with that in mind, would he have been able to keep Benavidez off of him? He might have been able to win some early rounds for sure, but I'm just a bit concerned with how James DeGale's stamina would have been later on in that fight if they were to ever meet. Benavidez seems to come on very strong, and he really does apply the pressure. And I'm thinking about that fight with James DeGale and Badou Jack, where Badou Jack really applied the pressure late on, and you know, that ended up being a draw. But a lot of people thought Badou Jack might have been able, should have won that decision. I certainly did. Not by a lot, but it wasn't necessarily a robbery. But I thought Badou Jack did enough to win that fight. There's been other fights as well with James DeGale. Obviously, he lost to Caleb Truax, which was a bit of a shocker at the time. That was probably towards the end of his prime, I would say. But then, yeah, he did defeat him in the rematch. But, you know, the wins over Lucien Boutte, you know, Darrell went over to America to do that. I think James DeGale, he had the talent and ability to give David Benavidez a lot of problems, but I just don't think he would have been able to sustain it for the whole 12. So I'm going to have to go with David Benavidez in this one. But make no mistake, James DeGale had a lot of heart, but he did like to get drawn into a war at times, and that only favours Benavidez for me. But if DeGale was to employ a stick and jab boxing game, which he was very capable of doing, he would have been able to, you know, it would not have been out of the realm of him outpointing Benavidez, making him look slow and tedious at times. I could see that as well, but I just don't know how long he would have been able to sustain it for. So I'm going to have to edge Benavidez in this one. But let me know your thoughts on it. You could definitely have a different opinion to me on it. All opinions are welcome. But yeah, great Mythical Monday matchup today. Let me know how you think this one goes. And also drop any recommendations for any future Mythical Monday matchups. I'll happily do them as the weeks go by. So thank you guys for listening, and I'll catch you on the next one.